Before we get into this list, what were some of your favorite projects that you listened to this year that's not going to make either of your lists because this list is so short, we're only doing top 5, but that you really love?
I'll give 3 of mine. My first one is Sunday Dinner by Nick Grant. It didn't make my top 5 list. It was almost right there, but I feel like Nick Grant is like your quintessential rapper. Like if you put a beat on, he's gonna do the definition of rap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's high lyricism and high content. Like he has a song on his album called Conceive, which I think is one of the greatest storytelling songs. It's up there with like the Rewind and the Sing About Me type songs.
That's high praises.
You know, and in my opinion. But that was a great album.
Why, before you go on to the next one, why that one didn't make your top 5?
Well, it's just the other albums that I have in my top 5. The only thing that Nick Grant was lacking to me was I felt like with the listening experience, it wasn't as consistent. I felt like he had some songs that were just high marks, and the other songs where I could kind of tell like he must have had this song a while ago and just threw this on this album. Type deal.
Yeah,
now I don't know that that's just speculation, but that's just what I got.
Yeah,
from that
we have been waiting
experience.
for this album from him for I think like 3 or 4 years. I think his debut album came out 2018, 2019. I may be way off, but his debut album came out a long time ago. So that could be it.
Yeah, and also too he came out with that To Pimp a Butterfly Light a couple years ago. But we can't go talk into that. But anyway, yeah, Sunday Dinner by Nick Grant, great album. You should go check it out if you haven't listened to it. Now, my second album, this is really a curveball because I've been trying to tell people about this album, and they're like, "Really? Are you sure?" The next album I'm about to mention isn't even an English album. This total album is in the French language, and this album is called Eloise by this guy named Yame. Now, I really want you to go check it out. It's Yame, Yame, with an accent on top. Because once you hear the first song, which is called Ayo Mbame, or Ayo Mbame, you'll hear what I'm talking about. You don't understand what he's saying. Well, me, I took French 4 years in high school, so I can pick up on a little bit what he's saying. But the average person isn't gonna know what he's saying, but you're gonna love the vibe. You're gonna love the melody that he has. And honestly, this is one of the songs. It came out around my birthday, actually in October. And this is one of the albums that I just throw on when I'm going on a walk. And I'm walking and I'm just bobbing my head. I'm feeling the melody of it. It's really the soundscape that he was able to produce. Whatever producers he were working with in France, like they're using live instrumentation. You can hear it. You can hear the cymbals. You can hear the drum patterns kind of fade in and fade out. Like, oh, this is a live person playing an instrument. And I really appreciate that. But aside from that, aside from knowing what he's talking about, you just feel it like, bruh, like this is... If I could understand the language, I know this would be dope.
Yeah.
So that's my second. And then my last one, this one didn't make my list because we had a criteria where, you know, the album had to be a certain time length, it had to be a certain number of tracks. And this one just missed the mark. But it's How Much Does a Piece of Mind Cost by La Russell. Now, if you know La Russell, independent artist, this man puts out an album probably every 2 months. That's what I'm guessing, like an average. He puts out an album every 2 months. And when you put out that much content, like it's hard for you to really grasp onto something or catch on to something because he just has so much out there. But this one in particular, I listen to every one he puts out. This one in particular was really the first one in a long time since like I first found him back in like 2019. This was the first album I was like, man, this is some actual good stuff he's talking about. If this album would have had like 4 more tracks on it, it could have been one of the top albums of the year. But more so, it plays like an EP.
Yeah.
But bruh, just like I said, the producer he was working with, the subject matter that he has in there. He's talking about he's always talking about being an independent artist. He's talking about therapy. He's talking about self-reflection and stuff. You know what I mean? He's talking about just the everyday things that we feel like. One of my favorite songs this year from this album is called Scaredy Cat, where he's doing self-reflection and just talking about, you know what I mean, just like the ills of becoming famous and, you know, really becoming successful and the dangers that come with that and the things that you're scared to do, the fear that you have of like trying to be the better version of you. Okay. I just thought it was a dope concept. But yeah, those are my 3 that missed the mark.
I'm gonna be honest, I apologize to Russell. So we had for the viewers, we had a full list of like all the albums that we are considering. And this list is probably like 100 albums, give or take. And so I probably listened to like 97. And La Rosa was one of those albums I didn't listen to just because although I'm a fan of him, as a man, as a fan of him as a businessman, I haven't been that great of a fan of his music and his albums. Right. I love his performances. Every time I see him perform or every time I see a video or run across a reel on IG, I always sit there and watch it. But his music output, I feel like the past 2 years, I have tried to get into it and it just haven't been my cup of tea. Yeah. So when I saw it on the list, I'm like, I'm not gonna waste my time with trying to press play on that album because have listened to his albums for like the past 2 years, and each and every time I've had the same experience. So like, okay, well, I know what I'm gonna get out of this, so I'm not gonna waste my time with that. Next? So I'm definitely gonna listen to it. I'm glad that you mentioned that and said that because I'm definitely gonna listen to that after we get done recording because that may have just been something that we missed. For me, some of my favorite albums that did not make this list. Let's see, what do I have here? My favorite one, not my favorite one, one of the top ones that we were actually just speaking about was this Gareth Duncan that you put me on. That album and that entire experience was something that I couldn't have foresaw and something that I haven't experienced for the past 20 years. You know, you spoke about, you know, your history and your family and them, your family history with music. And because of that, I have been privy to a lot of the DeBarges because your family worked with the DeBarges a lot growing up. So I grew up a fan of El DeBarge and Chico DeBarge and just the entire DeBarge family. And even as an adult, you know, I go back and rediscover some of their music. When I put on this album, first of all, just from the cover, I did not expect what I ended up listening to. Like you hear a lot of that like Roger Troutman type of production. You hear his vocals sound, and I'm not even saying this is. I know comparison is what is this saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. I know comparison is a thief of joy, so I don't want to compare him to DeBarge. But when I press play on that album and I start to hear the first song, I'm like, this sounds like a DeBarge.
It gives you that feel.
Yeah, and then you go on throughout the entire album, and it's like just a sonic experience of like those same type of instruments that I remember hearing growing up, but also the voice reflection and things like that. I'm like, is he related to them? And he just don't want to use his name or something like that. But it sounds like it can be easily mistaken as a modern day DeBarge. So I encourage y'all to definitely listen to Gareth Duncan. Where did I just have that at? Gareth Duncan. What's the album called?
Dang, what is it called? And you just said it.
I just had it in front of me. Gareth Duncan, Welcome Home.
Yeah,
Gareth
Duncan, Welcome Home. It only has 2 albums. So.
Yep. I'm tripping. Another one of those albums that's on my list that I'm not going to make either of those. Or the reason why that didn't make my R&B list, I want to say, is there's definitely a lot of great output of R&B, and there was a lot of R&B that I felt like experimented with different sounds. Like it's not, you can listen to this album and it's not the same straight through. And so when I was going through picking my top 5 albums, that was it had a huge portion of how I was grading these albums because there was a lot of great R&B albums, but the sounds consistent through the entire time. And then there were some great R&B albums to where the sound sounds different and it still is consistent with the artist being true and genuine to themselves. So that's literally the only reason why that album didn't make my list.
That makes sense.
Is because it just sounded the same throughout the entire album. There was some that did a little bit different. The next album that didn't make my list that I'm sorry, not even sorry, but I'm sad that it didn't make my list is a rap album, The Mind of a Saint, Skyzoo. I feel like for the past 7 years, Skyzoo has been in my top 5 album lists every year consistently because that's the quality of music he's been putting out. Yeah. And this one just didn't make it. And the only reason why I didn't make it because there were a few skips on this album. This album is told from the mind state of Franklin Saint if he was a rapper. Skyzoo is a rapper from the East Coast, and he created this, not the fictional character, but he created an album from the mind state of Franklin Saint from the hit series Snowfall, and he's rapping about that. He's rapping about Franklin Saint experiences. He's rapping about, you know, Franklin Saint. Literally the last song of the album is him in this fictional meeting of Nipsey Hussle's father and Nipsey Hussle's brother running into them and Crenshaw, things like that. Like, that's how far along he goes to tell the story.
Creativity on 10.
Yeah, 1,000. And Skyzoo is really great with that. That he's one of my favorite rappers and have been for the past decade because he's really, when we speak about the technicality of rapping, he can do that with the best of them. And so literally the only reason why this album didn't make my list is because there were some skippables on the album, and there's probably maybe just 2 skippables, but in comparison to my experiences with his other albums, there was non skips. Like I could listen to all the rest of his albums straight through, and I wouldn't skip a single song. And there was some songs on here it was like, I can live without it. But I understand how hard that is to be telling. It's a conceptual album, but you're also telling it from the mind state of a fictional character. Like I can understand how hard that is. So for that album to be that good, despite that, I still commend him for it. But there were other rap albums I feel like that were better than his as far as my top 5 goes.
Yeah.
My last album that didn't make either of those lists that really is on this list of honorable mentions. The only reason why I mentioned it is because it surprised me. Shrimp for Life, Ray Shremmerd.
Oh yeah.
I listen to all the albums all the time, and I go to it for that experience. It's a vibe, it's turn up songs. This wasn't that. I mean, it was that, but there were songs on there like Something I Forgot, I was like, wait, what?
A little different.
Yeah, and that just comes with growth. You know, they've been in the news, not in the news, but you know, a big story the past 3 years was, you know, they have a younger brother who I don't know if it was their father or their stepfather. Forgive me if I'm I think it was their father. It might have been a father. I think their younger brother killed their father. And so in that song, they're talking about it. So to see them two, who's been, you know, the turn up anthems and, you know, the party
club
songs.
go-tos.
Yeah. See them to get that introspective and not seem like it's too far outside of the box. Like that's one of my favorite songs of the year. And it's not even just that song. Like the other songs on there as well. It's their more, upbeat party bangers, turned up songs, whatever the case may be. And it just sounds really good from start to finish. I think it may be like a song or two that I won't go back and listen to. But they really surprised me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm about to say, even when like I don't know like who their producer and their engineer were, but like I also listened to like the quality of sound.
Yeah.
Like even this album compared to their other albums, it's just even sharper on the mixing. Or whatnot. And I feel like they're not with just their content growing, but I feel like their production choice actually grew a little bit on that one too. So yeah, I'm right with you. That was a good album.